The digital boarding pass flashed emerald green on the gate scanner twice, but the gate agent immediately pulled the ticket back, locked eyes with the elegant black woman in the tailored navy suit, and announced loudly enough for the entire terminal to hear that first class was strictly reserved for verified passengers. Gate A7 at Chicago O'Hare International Airport was suffocatingly crowded, buzzing with the restless energy of hundreds of travelers waiting for Flight 1247 to Atlanta. The air was thick with tension as Lisa Morrison, a gate agent with barely 3 months of experience, held the American Express Centurion black card between her fingers as if it were a dangerous counterfeit. Dr. Amara Sterling, Chief Executive Officer of DS Holdings, stood perfectly still, her posture immaculate, refusing to let the overt skepticism of the airline staff shake her profound sense of dignity. Within seconds, the whispers among the waiting passengers spread like wildfire, and smartphones were raised as the boarding line ground to a complete halt. Little did the airline staff know that the quiet woman they were attempting to humiliate did not just hold a first-class ticket. She held the financial fate of their entire corporate ecosystem in her leather briefcase. This was not a routine case of a misplaced reservation or a technical glitch. It was the catalyst for a multi-million-dollar corporate showdown that would alter the aviation industry forever. Lisa Morrison frowned deeply, her eyes narrowing, as she demanded that Amara step out of the line and wait by the side until internal security could verify that the premium black card had not been stolen or forged. Instead of reacting with anger or raising her voice, Amara looked directly into the agent's eyes, adjusted her grip on her distinct red portfolio labeled Corporate Confidential, and replied with absolute composure, stating that she understood the concern and would gladly give them all the time they needed to verify the truth. Behind Amara, a tech-savvy passenger named Jake Chen realized that something fundamentally unjust was unfolding right before his eyes, prompting him to open his TikTok app and start broadcasting live to an audience that grew from dozens to thousands within minutes. Simultaneously, Maria Santos, an influential civil rights advocate sitting near the boarding area, pulled out her phone to stream the encounter on Instagram Live, tagging the airline's official corporate handle to ensure maximum transparency. Lisa Morrison picked up her desk phone, dialing internal airport security with an urgent request to dispatch officers to handle a suspicious, potentially fraudulent, high-value passenger at Gate A7. The supervisor on duty, Tom Bradley, a 20-year veteran of the airline who prided himself on managing difficult situations, walked over with an arrogant stride, sizing up the scene in less than 3 seconds, before immediately taking the side of his subordinate without even glancing at Amara's impeccable credentials. Bradley adjusted his tie, looked down at Amara, and informed her that due to suspicious credit card activity and the inability to provide immediate corporate employment verification for a first-class ticket, she would need to follow him to an interrogation room down the hall. A loud murmur of disapproval erupted from the passengers behind them, with Dr. James Mitchell, a prominent physician traveling to a medical conference in Atlanta, shouting that this was an undisguised act of discrimination and that the woman had done absolutely nothing wrong. Amara's phone began to vibrate continuously in her hand, displaying 17 missed calls from the corporate headquarters in Atlanta. But she calmly flipped the screen down, keeping her focus entirely on the airline representatives who were digging themselves into a legal grave. Bradley checked his watch nervously, reminding Amara that the final boarding call was being announced, and that Flight 1247 would push back from the gate with or without her if she did not comply with their standard security protocols immediately. Amara took a slow, deep breath, her fingers tapping once against the red portfolio, and told the supervisor that while she was completely willing to cooperate, they needed to understand the immense legal and financial liability their selective enforcement of protocols was about to generate for their brand. The local digital departure board above Gate A7 flashed a stark red warning indicating that boarding was entering its final moments. Yet the standoff between corporate arrogance and unyielding dignity only intensified as TSA officers Davis and Kim arrived at the scene. Lisa Morrison pointed an accusing finger at Amara's briefcase, loudly declaring that the luxury leather case and the elite status card were highly suspicious for someone who refused to provide a standard corporate employee badge on command. Supervisor Tom Bradley nodded in approval, gesturing for the TSA agents to step in and escort Amara away from the gate area, so that the remaining passengers could board and minimize the flight's mounting departure delay. However, Officer Davis, a seasoned security professional, noticed the utter calmness in Amara's eyes and the presence of multiple live-streaming smartphones, recording every single word, which caused him to hesitate and request a clear clarification of the exact corporate policy being violated. Amara smiled a small, knowing smile, an expression of quiet power that caused Lisa Morrison to take an involuntary step backward as the crowd of passengers grew increasingly vocal in their support. Amara opened her briefcase just wide enough to reveal the edge of a document bearing the airline's official corporate logo, stating that before they made an irreversible mistake, they should examine the nature of the documentation she was holding close to her chest. Jake Chen's TikTok live stream had exploded to over 800 concurrent viewers, with the comments section transforming into a digital protest against corporate bias, demanding the immediate termination of the gate employees involved. The digital footprint was expanding rapidly across social media platforms, with local Chicago news editors picking up the stream and generating a trending hashtag that caught the attention of the airline's regional communications team. Suddenly, the station manager for O'Hare, Rebecca Walsh, arrived breathless at Gate A7, her multi-channel radio crackling with frantic updates from senior corporate executives who were watching the viral public relations disaster unfold in real time. Walsh pushed past Bradley and Morrison, demanding an immediate status report on what had been logged into the system as a standard first-class fraud intervention, but was looking more like a systemic catastrophe. Bradley explained that the passenger had failed to provide adequate employment verification for the high-value purchase, adding that they were simply protecting the airline's premium cabin integrity from unauthorized travelers. Dr. Mitchell stepped forward again, confronting Walsh directly by asking if the airline routinely required white male executives in business suits to provide corporate employment badges and multi-factor identity verification before allowing them into the first-class cabin. Walsh's face drained of color as she took the identification documents from Amara's hand, reviewing the driver's license, the passport, and the elite credit cards, all of which matched the passenger manifest flawlessly without a single discrepancy. Amara looked directly at Walsh's name tag and asked with calm precision whether the airline's legal department had thoroughly briefed regional station managers on the multi-million-dollar discrimination settlements faced by their competitors over the last 3 years. She casually cited the $10.5 million settlement paid by United Airlines. In 2017, the $9.8 million resolution faced by American Airlines in 2020, and the recent $7.2 million class action penalty endured by Southwest Airlines, proving that she possessed an exhaustive understanding of aviation law. Walsh's radio erupted with a loud burst of static, and the voice of the regional operations director demanded to know why Gate A7 had not completed boarding, reminding her that every minute of delay at a major hub like O'Hare cost the company thousands of dollars in sequential logistical penalties. Amara opened her red portfolio, pulled out a document bound in the airline's official corporate colors, and asked Walsh if she was familiar with the high-level business partners meeting scheduled for exactly 4:30 p.m. at the global headquarters in Atlanta. The atmosphere at Gate A7 transformed from a routine airport delay into a high-stakes corporate battlefield as Rebecca Walsh stared at the document in Amara's hand, recognizing the confidential formatting utilized exclusively by the airline's executive board. Amara explained that the 17 missed calls on her phone were from the airline's senior vice president of operations, who was currently sitting in a boardroom in Atlanta waiting for the primary strategic consultant to arrive and present the annual performance review. Lisa Morrison tried to interrupt, claiming that anyone could print a fake document with a corporate logo, but Tom Bradley quickly grabbed her arm, his long years of experience finally overriding his arrogance as he realized the catastrophic scale of their miscalculation. Jake Chen's live stream had now surpassed 1,500 viewers, and the digital outrage had officially crossed over into mainstream financial tech forums, with users identifying Dr. Amara Sterling as one of the most powerful corporate restructuring experts in the country. Amara turned her attention back to Walsh, stating that the employment verification they had so aggressively demanded was right here in the text of page 12 of the Global Logistics and Diversity Consulting Agreement between the airline and her firm, DS Holdings. She read the highlighted section aloud, revealing a $45 million annual strategic partnership spanning 5 years, which gave her company direct oversight over the airline's internal operational protocols and customer experience training methodologies. The entire gate area fell into a dead silence, broken only by the ambient noise of the airport terminal and the low murmurs of shocked passengers who realized they were witnessing the ultimate corporate reversal. Walsh felt a cold sweat break out across her neck as she connected the dots, realizing that the woman her staff had tried to kick out of the first-class line was the very person contracted to evaluate and authorize their regional operational budget. Amara noted that the specific item number 3 on the afternoon's boardroom agenda was the annual review of customer discrimination incidents and crisis management efficiency, pointing out the exquisite irony of the situation unfolding at O'Hare. Before Walsh could formulate a response or offer a desperate corporate apology, a regional supervisor named Marcus Thompson came sprinting through the terminal, having been alerted by the corporate communications team about the viral video trending nationwide. Thompson was completely out of breath, his face filled with sheer panic as he looked at the crowd of passengers filming the scene and realized that the public relations damage had already penetrated the airline's stock valuation in afternoon trading. He immediately addressed Amara by her title, offering his deepest and most profound personal apologies for the entirely unacceptable and deeply embarrassing treatment she had experienced at the hands of the gate staff. Amara looked at Thompson calmly, closed her red portfolio with a sharp click, and asked him whether they should focus on fixing the immediate public relations disaster or addressing the deeply rooted systemic biases that allowed such an incident to occur in the first place. Thompson nodded frantically, stating that the airline would comply with any and all demands she made, pleading with her to board the aircraft immediately so they could ground the viral narrative before it caused irreparable damage to their brand equity. Amara raised her hand, silencing the regional supervisor, and stated that she would only board Flight 1247 if the airline committed to a binding, non-negotiable 3-phase operational overhaul that would be written into their $45 million contract before the sun set. Amara stood her ground at the threshold of the jetway, utilizing the immense leverage of the viral documentation and her multi-million-dollar corporate contract to dictate the absolute terms of the airline's future customer service architecture. She demanded the immediate implementation of a comprehensive bias interruption training program for every single frontline employee across all 10 major domestic hubs to be launched within the next 90 days, without exception. Furthermore, she required the immediate integration of a real-time passenger bias reporting system built directly into the airline's mobile application, allowing travelers to flag discriminatory behavior instantly to regional supervisors who would be empowered to intervene before an aircraft departed. Finally, Amara insisted on a strict diversity and equity accountability matrix for all mid-level and senior management hiring practices, backed by mandatory quarterly progress reports that would be reviewed directly by her firm, DS Holdings. Thompson agreed to every single condition without a moment of hesitation, pulling out his corporate tablet to digitally authorize the preliminary addendum to the strategic partnership agreement right there at the gate counter. Amara turned to the passengers who had spent the last 45 minutes documenting the entire confrontation, expressing her profound gratitude to Jake Chen, Maria Santos, and Dr. Mitchell for refusing to let injustice remain invisible to the world. She noted that true transparency requires courageous witnesses and that the modern smartphone had become one of the most powerful tools for enforcing corporate accountability and social equity in daily life. Amara then looked back at Lisa Morrison and Tom Bradley, who were standing frozen in fear of immediate termination, and told them that she had no interest in seeking personal revenge or demanding their firing, because true progress focuses on education and systemic prevention rather than simple punishment. She looked at Walsh and stated that their actions today, while deeply flawed, had provided the perfect real-world case study to prove exactly why her firm's $45 million consulting program was worth every single penny to the airline's long-term survival. With her briefcase securely in hand and her red portfolio tucked under her arm, Dr. Amara Sterling walked down the jetway and boarded Flight 1247, leaving behind a completely transformed regional management team and a gate area that was still buzzing with the energy of a historic victory. As she settled into her first-class seat, 2A, the lead flight attendant, Jennifer Nash, approached her with a mixture of deep respect and visible nervousness, offering a formal apology on behalf of the entire in-flight crew for the delays and distress caused at the terminal. Amara smiled warmly, pulled out her corporate smartphone, and asked Jennifer if she had ever received comprehensive behavioral bias training during her initial onboarding process with the company. Jennifer shook her head, explaining that the current training was merely a brief online module completed during orientation, which prompted Amara to make a detailed digital note in her presentation file, declaring that this operational deficit would be the very first thing addressed in the new corporate framework. As the aircraft pushed back from the gate, 32 minutes behind its original schedule, Amara opened her high-performance laptop connected to the in-flight internet system and began drafting an exhaustive brief for the upcoming executive boardroom session in Atlanta. The twin engines of Flight 1247 roared to life as the aircraft climbed into the afternoon sky. But inside the first-class cabin, Dr. Amara Sterling was entirely focused on analyzing the rapidly expanding digital shockwave generated by the incident at Gate A7. Jake Chen's TikTok video had breached 23,000 views within less than an hour, and the comment sections were rapidly filling with thousands of professional men and women sharing their own harrowing accounts of being marginalized by airline personnel despite holding premium tickets. Amara systematically screenshotted these testimonies, recognizing that raw qualitative data from real consumers was far more powerful than any abstract corporate metric when confronting an entrenched board of directors. Her phone buzzed with an encrypted high-priority email from Patricia Williams, the Senior Vice President of Customer Experience in Atlanta, who expressed her absolute horror after seeing the viral videos and requested an emergency breakfast meeting the following morning to discuss immediate corporate damage control. Amara replied with characteristic efficiency, stating that she would remain in Atlanta until Friday, and that the meeting must focus on implementing the agreed-upon structural solutions rather than drafting empty public relations statements. Upon landing at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, Amara was met at the arrival gate by Marcus Thompson and two senior operational analysts who had been ordered by corporate leadership to provide her with whatever logistical support she required. Thompson looked completely overwhelmed, informing Amara that the airline's stock price had dipped by nearly 1.2% in after-hours trading due to the viral controversy, proving that the market was highly sensitive to issues of corporate ethics and consumer trust. Amara looked at the frantic managers and stated that she did not want to hear empty apologies. Instead, she demanded a complete download of the airline's historical employee complaint logs, regional customer satisfaction data, broken down by demographic metrics, and a full accounting of all pending civil liability lawsuits across their entire domestic network. She gave the analytical team a strict deadline of 9 a.m. the following morning, reminding them that the executive boardroom review would require cold hard facts if they expected to salvage their $45 million strategic partnership. The next morning, the grand conference room at the airline's global headquarters was thick with palpable anxiety as Amara entered wearing an immaculate charcoal suit and carrying her signature red portfolio containing the definitive roadmap for the company's operational resurrection. Senior Vice President Williams, Regional Director Chen, and Head of Legal Affairs Martinez were already seated around the massive mahogany table, their expressions grim as they stared at a large projection screen displaying the live social media tracking data. Amara did not waste time with pleasantries. She immediately connected her laptop to the central corporate network and replayed the raw footage from Gate A7, forcing the executive leadership to watch the exact moment their employees attempted to criminalize a major corporate asset. The room remained completely silent as the audio echoed through the speakers, making it impossible for anyone to deny the severity of the institutional failure that had transpired at O'Hare. Amara advanced her presentation to the financial impact slides, demonstrating with clinical precision that the negative public sentiment generated by the O'Hare incident could cost the airline an estimated $2.3 million in lost bookings over the next 6 months alone, if left unaddressed. She noted that modern consumers, particularly high-value business travelers and diversity-conscious corporate accounts, were increasingly choosing brands that aligned with their ethical values, meaning that a reputation for bias was a direct threat to the company's bottom-line stability. Legal Affairs Director Martinez reviewed the data, admitting that the company was already defending 6 separate civil discrimination lawsuits across various regional jurisdictions, with an average defense and settlement cost exceeding $1.2 million per case. Amara looked around the table, locking eyes with each executive, and stated that the $45 million partnership between DS Holdings and the airline was explicitly contingent upon the company's willingness to transition from a culture of retroactive damage control to a culture of proactive institutional excellence. She laid out the definitive three-phase implementation plan, revealing that Phase 1 would involve the immediate deployment of interactive scenario-based bias interruption training for over 8,500 frontline employees at all major travel hubs within the next 120 days. This initial phase would require a targeted investment of $650,000, a microscopic fraction of the airline's marketing budget that would yield an immense return on investment by drastically reducing customer complaint management overhead and preventing future litigation. Phase 2 would see the immediate development and beta testing of the real-time passenger feedback application across 5 selected pilot airports, allowing supervisors to resolve service discrepancies instantly on the ground before they escalated into viral public relations disasters. Regional Director Chen questioned the feasibility of the software deployment timeline, but Amara countered with a detailed technical roadmap compiled by her engineering firm, proving that the system could be fully integrated into the existing corporate app infrastructure within 6 months. Phase 3 would establish a strict executive accountability framework linking annual management performance bonuses directly to the successful reduction of demographic service complaints and the achievement of verifiable diversity benchmarks within regional hub leadership teams. Amara stood up, walked to the expansive glass windows overlooking the bustling runways of Atlanta, and delivered her ultimate ultimatum. Either the board authorized the complete execution of this systemic transformation today, or DS Holdings would formally terminate the partnership and reallocate its extensive logistical expertise to a competing carrier that understood that dignity was a fundamental requirement of modern business. The executive board voted unanimously to authorize the complete implementation of Dr. Amara Sterling's three-phase operational blueprint, allocating the full necessary resources to ensure that the airline would become an industry leader in behavioral equity and consumer safety. Within less than 90 days of the historic boardroom confrontation, the new bias interruption training modules were deployed across the network, completely replacing the outdated corporate slide presentations with immersive real-world conflict resolution scenarios. Surprisingly, one of the very first employees to volunteer for the advanced training program was Lisa Morrison, who had spent the weeks following the O'Hare incident reflecting deeply on the viral video and realizing the profound negative impact her unconscious assumptions had caused. Morrison worked tirelessly to master the de-escalation techniques and behavioral metrics, eventually transitioning from a source of institutional liability into a powerful peer educator who helped incoming gate agents recognize and neutralize their own internal biases before stepping onto the terminal floor. Station manager Rebecca Walsh received extensive leadership coaching through DS Holdings, transforming her management style to emphasize transparency, accountability, and the absolute protection of passenger dignity across all gates under her operational jurisdiction. Tom Bradley was assigned to a specialized focus group tasked with developing real-time intervention protocols for frontline supervisors, ensuring that his 20 years of operational experience were channeled into constructive systemic reform rather than the defense of archaic corporate habits. Meanwhile, the airline's new real-time feedback application entered its highly anticipated beta phase at 5 major domestic hubs, receiving widespread acclaim from both travel industry analysts and consumer advocacy organizations worldwide. The software featured a sophisticated analytical engine that automatically flagged specific terminals or gate clusters that generated higher than average service complaints, allowing corporate quality control teams to intervene with targeted coaching and structural support before systemic issues could solidify. Conversely, the system also tracked and highlighted exemplary service interactions, providing public corporate recognition and substantial financial incentives to employees who consistently demonstrated excellence, empathy, and professionalism in their daily interactions with the traveling public. Jennifer Nash, the flight attendant who had spoken with Amara on Flight 1247, was promoted to the position of Chief Customer Advocate for the Atlanta hub, a newly created executive role dedicated to ensuring that the voices of marginalized passengers were escalated directly to senior operational leadership without delay. Nash noted in a prominent industry feature that Dr. Sterling's radical approach had completely re-engineered the airline's internal culture, proving that treating consumers with absolute respect was not merely an abstract moral duty, but a strategic cornerstone of corporate profitability and brand longevity. The quantitative metrics compiled 12 months after the implementation of the DS Holdings framework provided undeniable proof of the resounding success of the structural reengineering project, with customer discrimination complaints plummeting by an unprecedented 45% across all pilot locations. Furthermore, internal employee satisfaction scores surged by 12%. As frontline gate agents and flight crews reported feeling far better equipped to manage complex interpersonal conflicts thanks to the robust behavioral tools provided by the training. Most impressively, corporate bookings from major Fortune 500 enterprises and diversity-focused organizations increased by 18%, directly injected millions of dollars in premium cabin revenue back into the airline's financial sheets and completely erasing the temporary losses incurred during the initial public relations crisis. The incredible turnaround caught the attention of the wider aviation sector, with major competitors like United Airlines and American Airlines formally reaching out to DS Holdings to explore licensing options for the proprietary bias prevention methodologies and real-time feedback infrastructure. To ensure that the lessons of the O'Hare incident would inspire future generations of corporate leaders, Amara established a permanent $500,000 annual scholarship fund through DS Holdings, specifically designed to support underrepresented students pursuing advanced degrees in hospitality management, corporate ethics, and organizational behavior. The very first recipient of the scholarship was Marcus Thompson, Jr., a brilliant business student from Chicago who had watched the viral video of Amara's confrontation at Gate A7 and resolved to dedicate his career to re-engineering corporate systems to prevent such injustices from occurring. Northwestern University's prestigious Kellogg School of Management officially integrated the confrontation and the subsequent corporate restructuring into their master's curriculum as a definitive case study on strategic leverage, institutional agility, and ethical asset management. The case study, titled Partnership Power: How Strategic Consultation Grounded Discrimination, quickly became required reading for corporate executives worldwide, cementing Dr. Amara Sterling's reputation as one of the most visionary and impactful business minds of her generation. The systemic philosophy developed at Gate A7 rapidly spread beyond the aviation industry, with luxury hotel chains, multinational retail corporations, and premium restaurant groups actively adopting the documentation for accountability framework to ensure that their consumer-facing operations were defined by absolute equity. 2 full years after the fateful afternoon at O'Hare, Amara stood before a massive audience of thousands of global business leaders at the National Customer Service Excellence Summit, where she was presented with the Lifetime Achievement Award for her revolutionary contributions to industrial culture and consumer advocacy. Amara adjusted her microphone as she stood before the roaring applause of the summit audience, looking out at the diverse sea of faces that represented the changing landscape of modern global enterprise. She began her keynote address by stating that real power is never about raising one's voice or demanding temporary corporate vengeance. Rather, it is about raising institutional standards systematically to ensure that no individual is ever made to feel invisible or suspect simply because of who they are. The summit organizers played a moving video montage documenting the expansive global ripple effects of her work, showing footage of thousands of airline workers, hotel managers, and corporate leaders actively engaging in the Dignity First protocols developed by DS Holdings. The presentation revealed that Lisa Morrison had recently been promoted to the role of National Training Coordinator for the airline, utilizing her personal journey of mistake education and transformation to inspire thousands of new hires across the country to approach customer service with radical empathy. Rebecca Walsh now served as the general manager of the entire Atlanta hub, overseeing billions of dollars in logistical assets. With a steadfast commitment to transparent management, equal protocol application, and human-centric corporate leadership. Jake Chen had successfully leveraged his viral live stream into a flourishing career as the executive director of a nationwide nonprofit organization called Document for Change, which trained everyday citizens to utilize digital media responsibly and safely to hold powerful corporate entities accountable to the public. Maria Santos had expanded her advocacy work into a premier crisis communications consulting firm, partnering with top-tier travel and hospitality brands to help them completely overhaul their internal diversity architectures before structural failures could manifest on the terminal floor. The airline's real-time feedback application had processed over 200,000 unique customer interactions, boasting a phenomenal 76% resolution rate within less than 24 hours of a complaint being logged, an unprecedented benchmark in the history of commercial aviation. DS Holdings had officially doubled its consulting practice, employing hundreds of specialized operational analysts and behavioral psychologists who worked around the clock to help forward-thinking corporate ecosystems align their financial objectives with the fundamental principles of social equity. The scholarship fund had grown to support over 200 brilliant students annually, creating an elite vanguard of highly educated, ethics-focused hospitality executives who were prepared to lead the global service economy into a future defined by systemic dignity and unyielding mutual respect. 1 month before the summit, Dr. Amara Sterling found herself back at Chicago O'Hare International Airport, walking through the familiar terminal toward Gate A7. To catch Flight 1247 back to the corporate headquarters in Atlanta. She watched the bustling crowd of thousands of diverse travelers moving through the gate area, noting that the atmosphere felt distinctly lighter, more professional, and infinitely more welcoming than it had 2 years prior. As she approached the counter, a young gate agent named Destiny Williams smiled warmly, greeted Amara by her title, and processed her first-class boarding pass with flawless technical efficiency and genuine hospitality within a matter of seconds. There were no suspicious side glances, no aggressive demands for extra-legal employment verification, no uncomfortable whispers from nearby staff, and no weaponization of corporate protocols against a paying passenger. There was only absolute excellence in customer service applied with complete consistency to every single human being who walked through the door. Amara took her seat in the premium cabin looking out the window at the endless horizon, realizing that the quiet battle she had fought at this very gate had successfully re-engineered the reality of millions of travelers who would never even know her name. As she concluded her powerful summit address, Amara looked directly into the lens of the main broadcast camera, her voice filled with a profound sense of quiet determination that captivated every single person watching across the globe. She reminded the audience that these real-world stories matter immensely because they provide undeniable proof that systemic injustice can be dismantled when individuals refuse to accept the status quo and instead choose to weaponize truth strategy and documentation to enforce lasting change. Amara challenged every viewer to look at the systems operating around them, whether in travel, corporate boardrooms, or daily civic interactions, and to find constructive, responsible, and fearless ways to demand higher standards of accountability from the institutions that serve the public. She noted that true influence does not come from temporary outrage, but from the relentless strategic engineering of better processes that elevate humanity, protect dignity, and ensure that fairness is a non-negotiable reality for all. As the final words of her speech echoed through the grand convention hall, the audience rose to their feet in a massive, unified standing ovation, celebrating the historic journey of a visionary leader who had used her brilliance to ground corporate discrimination and lift the entire aviation industry to a higher, more honorable plane of existence.